little English imitation. Right. So, what we've just gotten is Shireen's primary strategy. This is what she normally does. That works. Okay. Now, what we want to find out, what we want to now pursue are the secondary strategies. That is, what happens when things aren't going well. Now, there could be any number of secondary strategies, anywhere from 0 to 20. But what I've found in working with people, modeling people, they generally seem to fall into 3 types. There's basically 3 types of situations that people get into that they need perhaps a different strategy to respond to what's going on. One of those situations is when what you normally do isn't working well enough. You know, it's working kind of, but not good enough, not fast enough, not as well as you would like it to work. Another instance is when it's not working at all, that what you normally do just isn't working. It's not happening. And so you need to do something different in order to satisfy your criterion. And the third instance is when it's not only not working, it's not going to work. You know, it becomes clear, obvious to you that you're not going to be able to satisfy your criterion. And those seem to me to be the 3 ones that we certainly want to find out about. And as I said before, you may or may not have secondary strategies for all of them. It just depends on your exemplar and what the context is, what the situation is that they're dealing with. So let's find out what Shireen has. So we just found out what you typically do that works. Now, it must happen at times that there you are inviting this child into the room, and you're smiling at them, you're getting down to the child's level, you're introducing them to other children, getting them to try and help the child. There must be times when it's not working well enough. Well, let me put it differently. Are there times when it's not working as well as you would like it to, and you do something different?
Yeah.
Yeah? So what do you do then? It's not working as well as you would like it to.
Well, depending on the situation, but if I can, I usually get the other children, so the other 3 children that are at the table, to interact with me and with the child. So I invite them, because this will, in a way, actually deviate sort of the
focus goes off of that child.
That's right.
And I see. Okay. So you take the focus off of the child by getting the others to interact with me. And you did.
And with the child.
Well, that's what I was going to say, with me and the child. And so I want to check something out. As I imagine doing that, one of the things that has changed is that, so now all of us are interacting together. What I find myself doing is just, instead of doing things to try and get the students to interact with this child or this child to interact with them, I'm just treating this child like he's just a member of our interaction. So I'm like operating as though he is one of us just participating, so I'm not treating him differently than the others. Okay, great. All right. Okay, and so in doing that, so is that one of the things you do, or is that what you do in those situations?
That's one of the things. Or sometimes I put my arm around the child. I mean, obviously, depending on what state the child is in, but if the child is sad or just not moving, I sort of try and touch the child somehow, if the child allows me to. And I actually ask the other children, it could be the other children on the table or the other children in the class, how could we help him? What could we do?
Is it sad or not? You said not moving? Or
Well, silent. Not
silent.
Yes. Sort of emotionless.
Emotion, okay,
yes.
Great. Great. Okay, and ask the other children, how can we how can we help? And then what? So you ask these children, so how can we help them?
Yes, and generally they come up with ideas. I mean, all sorts of ideas. Or perhaps you could, or perhaps you might, or why don't we?
And then what happens with the ideas?
And I let them experiment with it.
Great. Which, of course, puts them immediately in interaction with this child. Right. And he certainly has the experience of the other children are making all these efforts to connect with me. Interact with me. Great. So are those kind of pretty much the two ways you would go?
Yes, another thing that I do is we have a whole policy in England that children should come to school with a water bottle. So they should all drink water during the day. And another idea is to actually suggest that perhaps whoever the child is might want to have a drink of water or go out and have a breath of fresh air. And what I do is I suggest that another child from the classroom could actually take them out. So we have a little area, which is sort of a playground area where they can go out. And there is a water fountain there. And so generally I choose, we have the form captain, so I choose the form captain, and the form captain will do that for me. Take the child out, have a drink of water, come back.
But out in quotes, just to indicate that it could be all kinds of things. Go out and run in the field, get some fresh air, get some water. Right. Okay. Now, this is an example. This is an example of what we were talking about before of a ad hoc strategy. It's not that step one, step two. First you do this, then you do this, then you do this. These are a set of strategic responses that she has that depend on what the situation is, and she'll do whatever seems appropriate, use whichever seems appropriate. All right. So does it happen that what you do normally, and even these kinds of interventions, they don't work at all. You don't get anywhere with this child.
Yes, it does.
That happens?
Yeah.
So what do you do then?
Well, sometimes I just leave the child alone because sometimes the child just basically needs space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I continue with whatever activity I'm doing, and I just leave that child alone so the child can observe what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's not pestered by me or by the other children because they need their...
They need the space. Mm-hmm. So you do that until, or what? What happens then?
Well, generally, after a while, the child will sort of get interested in whatever we're doing. I have had the extreme where the child will get up and go and fiddle around with somebody else's things, and I just sort of keep an eye so that it doesn't. There is a threshold.
Sure.
There's a limit, and
Sure.
as long as it doesn't go over that limit, I just let it be. And also because generally the children, if we're doing some kind of activity, the children are into their activity. I mean, they might complain, say, oh, he's touching my pencil case and so on. And I sort of say, well, he's exploring what's in your pencil case. Maybe you've got some wonderful ideas in there, so that it's susceptible to the others. Obviously, if the child starts reacting physically, then I interfere. But otherwise, I just let it go.
Right. Okay. So what, you leave the child alone, but you observe them to, what you're looking for is when and what do they get interested in.
Yeah.
And once they're interested in something, then you're back to where you were before, engaging them. Well, I wrote that badly, but there you go. I'll fix it later. Interesting. Okay, good. Now, does it happen that you can't help a child adapt to a culture? Does that happen?
Yes, it's happened once to me.
Happened once.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, what I decided to do with first thing I would do is talk to the principal about whatever problem there was, and get in touch with the parents, and actually talk to the parents and see what we can do if there's anything, because what they can do to help me actually. And maybe what the school can do.
So, but what happened with this one child in which
he
couldn't get through?
Let's see, he was Christian, and Christian was so angry that he started attacking other children physically. So he was pulling hair, spitting at them, kicking them, going under the table, pulling their legs, and then he started attacking the staff. So he started with me. Pulling my hair, kicking me, and I just got to a limit where I had to contain him, and literally I had to block his arms. So at that point, I was afraid that there'd be complaints from mainly the parents, but also complaints from other members of staff. So I actually suggested to the principal that maybe we should have the parents in. And unfortunately, only Mummy came. Daddy was too busy. And I suggested maybe that I would like to actually go to his home and see what his home context was like. And the way to get around that was I said maybe he needed some extra coaching. And the mother accepted the idea because I wanted to see what his behavior was like at home. Because the mother wasn't actually coming out with anything that could help me within the school walls. And I observed him at home. I actually went into his bedroom and just observed him. see what he was doing, and we did a little bit of work. And the mother suggested afterwards, when we had a talk about his behavior, that perhaps he should be assessed by a child psychologist. But what I found out was that Daddy's never at home. Daddy travels all around the world. And so when Daddy comes back, Christian's very angry with his father because he doesn't have any attention. Daddy's too tired, or Daddy's on the computer, or Daddy's out playing golf. So he was taking it out on everybody else, including Mummy, who admitted after a while.
So what I want to know is, what did you do?
Well, I tried to contain him by explaining to him that there are limits. And if he was going to attack me, hey, I could attack him too. And so if he'd pull my hair, and Mummy was okay, because I had to have carte blanche from Mummy that I could go to a certain extent and explain to the child, because the mother wasn't able to do it. And I'd do the same thing, but just very gently, and show him. And I'd also express that hurting, well, I can react, and I'd go, ouch, just to show him that it was hurting me. And if he was kicking, I'd take away his shoes. So he'd be without his shoes for whatever time he needed to be without his shoes. So we had to, and he would lose face. So to walk into the classroom without his shoes from outside, he learnt the word shoes very quickly. Shoes. And I explained to him he would get his shoes back if his behaviors corresponded to the behavior we were expecting. And I'd show him. And if he had a moment where that wouldn't work, I would, because I couldn't leave him on his own, I would literally have to carry him in, because he would just flop. I would put him, I have a little corner where there are cushions and there's a sort of a mat, and there are some toys there. And I'd just sit him there, and I'd explain to him, when he was ready, he could give me whatever signal he liked, and he could come and join with the others. But as long as he was angry, he would stay there.
Okay. And what happened with Christian? Is he still?
He's still at the school, and it took him 6 months to actually adapt. I had 6 months of pulling hair and kicking and spitting and so on. And every child was afraid of him, so nobody would play with him. And now he still has a little bit of anger with him, but he's actually goes to see a psychotherapist twice a week.
So, if I'm now kind of pulling the pieces together of that, what I got out of that were that you start seeking external information and help with the child, and you start. You create ongoing opportunities for feedback, direct feedback on his behavior. And it could take all kinds of forms. But direct feedback on the consequences of his behaviors. And is there anything else, do you think? I mean, there were lots of examples that you gave of those things.
Yes.
Is there a general pattern to what you did that doesn't fall under what I just described?
No, there's just one thing that I might add, is that I did ask for some help in the classroom. So in fact, what happened was, after a while, I had a child psychologist come in about 3 times a week, just for an hour, because I was very concerned about the other children and their reaction. And so the child psychologist had special moments with this child where the child would actually be taken out of the classroom, or would stay in the classroom according to whatever activity. But if the child played up, it was easy to actually get the child out of the classroom.
All right. So I'm going to, this is the particular choices one would make in those situations are depends so much on the particular situation that I think that what makes more sense is to simply say that you, in those situations, you seek information and support from others outside of the classroom,
Yes.
and that support could be administrators, parents, psychologists, whoever is needed
Yes.
to have an impact or influence on what's going on with this child. And you institute some forms of direct feedback and consequences for the child's behavior. Is that right? Okay, great. All right. Secondary strategies. That's it. Now, do you see how it's useful to get these secondary strategies? Because that's real life. Real life is not things going just fine, you know,